this is a fantastic turnout, and I appreciate it very, very much. You know, we began this campaign about 3.5 months ago, and the momentum from coast to coast has been extraordinary. We have not only had some of the largest turnouts in Iowa, New Hampshire. We were in the West Coast a week or so ago, and we had 28,000 people out in Portland, Oregon. We had 27,000 people out in Los Angeles. Those types of crowds and that type of enthusiasm is what we're seeing all over America and what we're seeing here today in Greenville. Thank you. This is a campaign on the move, and it's a campaign that is going to win. This campaign differs from the other campaigns in many, many important ways. It's not only about our vision for America, it's how we are running the campaign. Let me give you an important example. Virtually every other campaign, Republican and Democratic, is dependent upon super PACs funded by billionaires and millionaires. We are not. We do not have a super PAC. We do not want the money of corporate America and billionaires. What this campaign is about is bringing people together, and I'm happy to tell you that up till now we have received almost 400,000 individual contributions. And the average contribution, not $1 million, not $500,000, $31.20. This is a people's campaign. What this campaign is about is bringing people together. Middle class and working families, low-income people, white, black, Hispanic, Native Americans, men and women, straight and gay, native-born and immigrant. What we understand is when we stand together as a people, and when we do not allow our opponents to divide us up by race or gender or where we were born or our sexual orientation, when we stand together, there is nothing we cannot accomplish. I've often been asked by the political pundits in the media, they say, well, you know, what's going on? Why is there so much excitement and enthusiasm? Well, that's a lot to do with it. Why? What's going on? And the answer is that the American people are sick and tired of establishment economics. They are sick and tired of establishment politics. And they are sick and tired of establishment media. The people of this country understand it in their gut that corporate greed is destroying our great country. And that it is not acceptable that almost all of the new wealth and income created in America are going to the top 1%. And as Deb just mentioned, the American people understand that our politics today is now dominated by big money interests who have unlimited amounts of money to spend to elect and buy candidates whose job is to represent the wealthy and the powerful. And the American people understand that much of corporate media is about talking about all kinds of things except the most important issues facing working families. And let me tell you something else that I think other candidates will not. This campaign is not about Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump or anybody else. This campaign is about you, your kids, and your parents. This campaign is not about personal attacks against other candidates. I've never run a negative campaign ad in my life. This campaign is about addressing the real issues facing the middle class of this country, of bringing people together, and of addressing those serious problems. The other point that I want to make early on here is that this campaign, very honestly, is not just about electing Bernie Sanders for president, as much as I would appreciate that. This campaign is about building a movement, creating a political revolution. That political revolution. I need your help, not just during this campaign. Obviously, that's enormously important. And as Simone mentioned, we need your help in every way possible. But let me say this to you. What this campaign is about is not just electing a president. It is about transforming America. I can't do it alone. We have got to do it together. And that is not just rhetoric, that's fact. And the reason for that is that no president, no matter how well-intentioned, will be able to bring about the changes that the middle class and working class need, that we need for our kids and the elderly, unless millions of people come together and stand up loudly and clearly and say that this great nation and our government belong to all of us and not just a handful of people. This country today faces more serious problems than at any time since the Great Depression, and if you throw in the global crisis of climate change, the problems may be even more severe. Today, we live in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world. But that reality means nothing to millions of people because almost all of that wealth and much of that income is going to the top 1%. America now has more income and wealth inequality than any other major country on earth, and it is worse today than at any time since 1928. The issue of income and wealth inequality is the great moral issue of our time. It is the great economic issue of our time. It is the great political issue of our time, and together we, in fact, are going to resolve that issue. There is something profoundly wrong when the top 1/10 of 1%, not 1%, 1/10 of 1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. There is something profoundly wrong when 58% of all new income today goes to the top 1%. There is something profoundly wrong when in America, I'm not talking about Paraguay, I'm not talking about some small developing country, when in America, one family, the Walton family of Walmart, owns more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American people. There is something profoundly wrong when we have seen in recent years a proliferation of millionaires and billionaires, and yet the average American is working longer hours for lower wages, and we have, by far, the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth. That is wrong. This campaign is sending a message to the most powerful people in this country, to the billionaire class. And what we are saying to them is, you're no longer going to be able to get it all. You are no longer going to get huge tax breaks when children in this country go hungry. We are no longer going to ship our jobs to China and other low-wage countries when millions of workers here are in desperate need of decent-paying jobs. No longer going to hide your profits in the Cayman Islands and in other tax havens. when this country has huge unmet needs. And let me touch upon how income and wealth inequality impacts not only the people of South Carolina, but people all across the country. In the last 2 years, the wealthiest 14 people in this country have seen their wealth increase by $156 billion. 14 people. But here in South Carolina, while 14 poor people saw an unimaginable increase in their wealth, 27% of the children here are living in poverty. 300,000 kids right here in South Carolina. Of those children living in poverty, 138,000 are black, 95,000 are white, and 34,000 are Hispanic. Childhood poverty here and around the country impacts people of all races. It is an international disgrace, and it is an issue that we will address. Acceptable to me that while the wealthiest people in this country become much, much wealthier, kids here in South Carolina and all over this country go hungry, lack decent childcare, lack decent educational opportunities, lack decent housing. That is not the kind of America we will continue. Basic rights. We are talking about health care. The United States of America today, I think many of you know, is the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right. And that is why I strongly support a Medicare for all single payer. Did not pass a single-payer health care system. It did pass an Affordable Care Act. Now, the Affordable Care Act, as I think you all know, is far from perfect. But we do understand that what it has accomplished is providing health insurance to millions of people who previously Affordable Care Act has reduced the number of uninsured in Kentucky from 20 to 12%. It has cut the uninsured population in Arkansas almost in half. In South Carolina, over 200,000 people would gain health insurance if the governor and legislature here would approve the expansion. And on top of that, the state would gain tens of thousands of good-paying jobs, and all of this will be almost completely paid for by the federal government, not the state government. In my view, it is wrong, it is terribly wrong, to allow a rigid, right-wing political ideology to stand in the way of health care for hundreds of thousands. To allow hundreds of people to die unnecessarily because they don't have Medicaid. It is wrong to force people to become much sicker than they otherwise would have been because they can't get to a doctor when they should. Continue the fight for a Medicare for all single-payer system, I would hope that South Carolina and every other state in the country takes full advantage of the Affordable Care Act. And when we talk about the economy, it's important to understand that we're not only talking about the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality, we are talking about the fact that the great middle class of this country, once the envy of the entire world, has been disappearing for the last 40 years. And that's the simple truth of it. Despite exploding technology and increased worker productivity, median family income today is almost $5,000 less than it was in 1999. And I want you all to think about it. Exploding technology, increased worker productivity, and yet in my state of Vermont, in your state, we have significant numbers of people who are not working one job, they're working 2 jobs, 3 jobs, trying to cobble together some income and health care. That is not what the American economy should be. We need an economy that works for working families, not just billionaires. And when we talk about the economy, let's talk about jobs. And let us understand that real unemployment, including those people who have given up looking for work and the millions who are working part-time when they want to work full-time, real unemployment is not 5.3%, it is over 10%. And let me tell you something else that nobody talks about, virtually nobody talks about. And that is that we have a major crisis today in terms of youth unemployment. And I want to address it. I asked the Economic Policy Institute to do a study for me. And this is what they found for kids who graduated high school between the age of 17 and 20. Listen to this. If those kids are whites, 33% of them unemployed or underemployed. If they are Hispanic, 36% unemployed or underemployed. If they are African American, 51%. Now, all of you are aware that the United States of America has the dubious distinction of having more people in jail than any other country on earth. China is over 3 times our size. It's a communist, authoritarian country, and yet we have more people in jail than and China. And if anyone here thinks there is not a connection of youth unemployment of 30, 40, 50%, and the fact that so many of our kids are going to jail, you would be sorely mistaken. In my view, it makes a lot more sense to be investing in jobs and education than in jails and incarceration. As president, I would work day and night to make certain we do not continue to have this distinction of more people in jail. Rather, I want us to have the distinction of being the best educated population. And when we talk about the economy, let us understand that there is a reason why millions of people are working 50, 60, 70 hours a week trying to cobble together some income. And the reason is that wages in America for millions of people are just too damn low. To recognize a simple truth. The federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour is a starvation wage and must be raised. The minimum wage in this country must become a living wage, $15 an hour over the next few years. It's not a radical idea, it is an American idea. That if somebody works 40 hours a week, that person should not be living in poverty. And brothers and sisters, when we talk about fair wages, I hope every man in this room will stand with the women and fight for parity. There is no rational economic reason why women should be earning 78 cents on the dollar compared to men. That has got to change. Now, we hear a lot from our Republican colleagues about family values. Have you ever talked about family values? These guys stay up nights worrying about families. Well, I have 4 kids. I've got 7 grandchildren, and Jane and I have been married for 27 years. We believe in family, and we believe that we must strengthen families in America. But we have a very different perspective on family values than do our Republican colleagues. What the Republicans are talking about when they refer to family values are telling every woman in America that they cannot control their own bodies. I disagree. What the Republicans are telling women in terms of so-called family values is they're not smart enough to be able to purchase the contraceptives they need, I disagree. And what the Republicans talk about when they refer to family values is to say that our gay brothers and sisters should not have the right to marry or enjoy the other benefits of American citizenship. I disagree. Now, when I talk about family values, what I talk about is ending the international embarrassment of the United States being the only major country on earth that does not guarantee family and medical leave to our families. South Carolina or Vermont who has a baby should be able to stay home with that baby for at least 3 months. Staying home with your baby, not being forced to go back to work because you don't have sufficient income. Staying home with your baby is a family value. Let's make it happen. And by the way, we have also got to end the absurdity of the United States being the only major country that does not guarantee sick time for our workers or paid vacation time. Let me tell you what I think we have got to do to address the jobs crisis in America. All of you are aware that throughout America, in my state, your state, all over America, our infrastructure, roads, bridges, water systems, wastewater plants, rail, airport are collapsing. We need a major program to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. And when we improve our infrastructure, investing $1 trillion over 5 years, we can create over 13 million decent paying jobs. And when we talk about jobs, it is not only necessary to create millions of decent paying jobs, it is necessary to prevent the loss of more and more jobs as a result of our disastrous trade policies. You are looking at a senator who voted, and a former congressman who voted against NAFTA, against CAFTA, permanent normal trade relations with China, is helping to lead the effort against this disastrous Trans-Pacific Partnership. Our trade policy must be about creating jobs and income for the middle class, not huge profits for corporate America. All of you are aware that as a result of the greed, recklessness, and illegal behavior on Wall Street, the middle class and working families of our country bailed them out. We bailed them out because they were, quote unquote, too big to fail. Well, it turns out that 3 out of the 4 largest banks in America are significantly bigger today than they were when we bailed them out because they were too big to fail. six largest banks in America issue 2/3 of the credit cards and 35% of mortgages. In my view, if a financial institution is too big to fail, it's too big to exist. Let's break it up. System which provides affordable loans to small and medium-sized businesses so we can create the jobs we need. We do not need a financial system on Wall Street which is an island unto itself, only concerned about making billions more in profits for themselves. You know, often people ask me, I say, well, what is the most important issue? And all of these issues are so important, it's hard to say this is more important than that. But let me tell you one issue that impacts every other issue. And that is that as a result of the disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United, as a result of that decision, the American political system has been totally corrupted, and the foundations of American democracy are being undermined. When you have one family, the Koch brothers, spending... You like them too. When you have this one family, an extreme right-wing family, spending some $900 million in this election cycle, that is more money than either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party will spend. When you have a situation like that, my friends, we are not talking about democracy, we're talking about oligarchy and autocracy. Made many campaign promises during this campaign, but this is one I have made, and I repeat to you. No nominee of mine to the United States Supreme Court will get that position unless he or she is loud and clear in telling the American people that their first order of business will be to overturn Citizens United. Citizens United. I am a passionate believer in democracy. Pretty radical idea that ordinary people, and not kings or queens or billionaires, that ordinary people should be able to control the future of their countries. And I want to see a political system where anybody, any working class person, low-income person, middle-class person, can run for office, regardless of his or her political views, conservative, progressive, moderate, whatever you are. You should be able to run for office without begging billionaires for financial support. Ago, I was at an event with Martin Luther King III and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, a major civil rights group. And while we were there, and Simone mentioned this, we were there to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the historic Voting Rights Act. But we were also there to make it clear that we are going to undo the damage done by the Supreme Court, which vitiated one of the major provisions of the Voting Rights Act. And what is going on right now, all over this country and in South Carolina, is a deliberate attempt to make it harder for low-income and seniors and people of color to vote. Office on many occasions. Sometimes I've won, sometimes I've lost, but it has never ever occurred to me to figure out a way to deny the vote to people who may disagree with me. We can disagree in a democracy about everything, but there should be no disagreement. But that it is an act of cowardice to try to prevent people in America from voting. And that is why I have introduced legislation which says pretty simply what exists in many other countries around the world. If you are 18 years of age, you're registered to vote. End of discussion. That we live in a highly competitive global economy. And we need, in this country, the best educated workforce in the world. But what we are looking at today is a sad situation with hundreds of thousands of bright, qualified young people who want to get a higher education, but they're unable to do that for one reason and one reason alone, and that is their family lacks the income. That is wrong. That is unfair to those individuals. It is absurd if we're talking about the future of our economy. And that is why I have introduced legislation and will implement, as President of the United States, a process by which every public college and university in America are tuition free. Get the education they need so they can be the doctors and the scientists and the engineers and the teachers this country desperately needs. And it is time that we also ended the absurdity that Jade was talking about a few moments ago, and that is that millions of Americans, some young, some not so young, are being crushed by horrendous levels of student debt. Now, it makes no sense to me that if you can refinance your home at 2 or 3%, it makes no sense to me that you're paying 8 to 10% on interest rates on the And furthermore, it makes no sense to me that the federal government is making billions in profit off of high interest rates for working class and low income families. We got to end that as well. What this campaign is about is a very fundamental debate over values, over priorities, and where this country should go. I am the ranking member, the leader of the opposition on the Senate Budget Committee. And what all of you should know is that the budget passed a few months ago by the Republicans made massive cuts in Medicare, massive cuts in Medicaid, massive cuts in Pell Grants, and at a time when millions of families are struggling to put food on the table, massive cuts in nutrition programs. And then, to add insult to injury, the Republicans provided over $250 billion in tax breaks to the top 0.2%. Let me tell my Republican colleagues that those values, those priorities are not America's values or America's priorities. No, we're not going to cut Social Security. We're going to expand Social Security. And as the former chairman of the Senate Veterans Committee, I will tell you loudly and clearly, no, we are not going to cut veterans' benefits. Not only are we not going to cut veterans' benefits, we're going to make sure that every veteran in this country gets the health care, quality health care, and benefits they have earned. When we talk about the many challenges facing our country, and when we talk about making America the kind of nation that we must become, we must talk about ending institutional racism. And making major reforms in a broken criminal justice system. The good news is that in recent years, our country has in fact made real progress in overcoming our legacy of historical racism. If we were sitting here, or standing as the case may be, 25, 30 years ago, and somebody said, you know, I think America has matured enough, has overcome its racist history, so that we will elect in 2008 an African American as president. Very few people would have thought that was possible, but it happened. It happened that the American people were able to look beyond the color of a candidate's skin and look into his ideas and his values. We should be proud of that. As everybody here knows, that racism still remains a much too real part of American life. And in that regard, I am not just talking about the sickness of a man who walked into a church in Charleston where he engaged in Bible studies, prayed with people in the room, and then took out a gun and killed 9 of them. I am not just talking about the hundreds of hate groups that exist all over this country, groups who are motivated only by hatred of blacks, hatred of gays, hatred of immigrants, hatred of Jews. I'm not just talking about that. I'm also talking about Sandra Bland and Michael Brown and Freddie Gray, here's the point. For a variety of reasons, you have seen these murders on television, but they have gone on decade after decade after decade. So let me just say this. If elected President of the United States, there is no one who will fight harder not only to end institutional racism, but to make fundamental changes in our broken criminal justice system. Now, let me just make a few points about how we need real reform of the criminal justice system. When I see on television, and you see on television, police forces in local communities all over this country who have heavy-duty military equipment, who look like an invading force rather than a local police department, you know and I know you got to demilitarize those police. For 8 years, worked very closely with our police department, and know that being a cop is a very tough job, and that most cops do it well. But what we must also make clear, that when a police officer, like any other public official, breaks the law, that officer must be held accountable. Country move toward the concept of community policing, where police officers are part of the community. And I want to see police departments look like the communities they're policing. Even police officials acknowledge that we need to take a hard look at the use of force. Force should be the last resort, not the first. We need to rethink the war on drugs. That we have many young Americans who have criminal records for smoking marijuana, but not one major Wall Street executive has been prosecuted. Sense of criminal justice. Destroying the lives of nonviolent young people by giving them criminal records, sometimes jailing them, but leaving the CEOs of Wall Street who destroyed the economy without any criminal record. That's wrong. Further, and I will be introducing legislation when Congress reconvenes in September, we must end the absurdity of private corporations making profits from running jails and police stations. Corporations should not be profiteering from people's misery and from people being in jail. We need to invest in drug courts and medical and mental health intervention rather than more attention. Substance abuse is a disease, a widespread and serious disease that we have got to deal with, and it must be treated as such. We need a path back from prison. If somebody comes out of jail and has no education, no job, no decent housing, no financial resources, we should not be shocked at the rate of recidivism that we see in this country today. When we talk, by the way, of bringing our people together, let us not forget that there are 11 million undocumented people in this country. In my view, they need legal protection. We need comprehensive immigration reform. We need a path toward citizenship. You are looking at a senator and a former congressman who believes that war should be the last resort. I voted against the war in Iraq. To tell you, but if you go to YouTube and look at what I said in voting against them or the speeches that I gave, sadly much of what I feared in fact happened in terms of the destabilization of the region. And let me tell you this, it kind of blows my mind listening to many of my Republican colleagues who seem to have forgotten what the cost of war is about. They have forgotten about the 6,700 brave men and women who died in Iraq and Afghanistan. They have forgotten about those who came home without legs and arms and eyesight. They have forgotten about the 500,000 who came home with PTSD and traumatic brain. Supporting the President's effort to make sure that Iran does not get a nuclear weapon. But that we do it in a peaceful way. I have not forgotten the cost of war, and I think what a great nation is about is not to go to war every other year, but to do everything that we can to maintain world peace. Let me conclude by asking you to think big, not small, to have a vision of what our great country can be. This is the wealthiest country in the history of the world, but what we have seen in the last 30 years is trillions of dollars transferred from the middle class and working families to the top 1/10 of 1%. We have got to reverse that process. Not a utopian vision. We can live in a country where health care is a right for all of our people. We can live in a country where we have the best child care and pre-K system in the world, not a disruption system. We can live in a country where every American, regardless of his or her income, can get the higher education they need. In which all of our seniors can retire with dignity and security and not be. We can live in a nation where everyone, no matter their race, their religion, their disability, or their sexual orientation, realizes the full promise of equality as a birthright of all Americans. Brothers and sisters, if we do not allow them to divide us up by race, by gender, by whether we're born in America or born someplace else, whether we're gay or whether we're straight, if we do not allow them to divide us up, if we stand together, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish, and I look forward to making that happen for you.